right in. And let me turn on captions as well. All right, hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to the How to Price Your Art with Art Prof Clara Lieu. I am going to do some quick in-house housekeeping and then we'll turn it over and I'll introduce Clara for this workshop. So my name is Sapir Chirk. I am with the Nevada Art Council. I am their artist service specialist, and on the call with me is Stephen Reed. Would you like to introduce yourself, Stephen?
Hello, I'm Stephen Reed, Artist Service Specialist, and I'm up in the Carson City office.
Great, thank you. So this webinar will be recorded and shared on our YouTube page later on. So if you need to take off or you missed something, your connection isn't bad, don't worry. You'll be able to watch the replay on our YouTube channel. And if you would like, there's a link in the chat to download the slides for today's webinar. Please do so. It's also available it will be available on our website. So if you miss it, just email us and we'll be able to share with you. The chat in this webinar is disabled, but you can use the Q&A function if you have any questions, and you can always use the raise hand function. We'll be able to allow you to speak, but questions will be answered at the end of the webinar. Clara is nice enough also at the end to review some of your pricing too. So if you have a shop or an online presence where you sell your work, you just want to know how much this work should be priced, go ahead and drop the link in the Q&A so she can review that later. All right, so let's jump in. I'm going to introduce Clara. Clara Lieu is the founder of Art Prof Project LLC. Please do check out her website, YouTube, Instagram, amazing information. Art Prof Project LLC is an online educational platform for learning visual arts. She was an adjunct professor at the Rhode Island School of Design from 2007 to 2020 and has received artist grants from the Massachusetts Cultural Council and the Puffin Foundation. All right, welcome, Clara.
Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm so excited to chat with all of you. So everybody knows you can type questions into the Q&A while I'm lecturing. The first hour is just going to be straight lecture. I'm not going to take questions during that time, but I will in the last 30 minutes. And I will also review some people's shops to talk about pricing more specifically, but you don't have to have a shop for me to review it. So if you're thinking about selling, you don't have a shop yet, you could say post your Instagram or your website, and I'm happy to help you get started. All right, let's talk about pricing your artwork. I think this is one of the most difficult, unclear things about being an artist. And a lot of artists are just totally baffled about how to even begin approaching this. And it's sometimes for people because sure, you can go and see people's prices on their shops, but it's oftentimes not really something people are that comfortable asking about unless you know somebody really well, or you're in a place like this where we are focusing on those types of questions. So I'm hoping to give everybody that type of space to speak really openly and honestly about this process. The first thing, pricing is very much trial and error. I know that sounds strange because you think that, oh, there should be a formula that I can just plug in, but it's not like that. And the problem is that it is so specific to each artist's situation that it's really hard for me oftentimes to give people generalizations, to say things like, oh, paintings should always start at 100, prints should never be more than this amount. It's so contingent upon the context. Are you selling in a gallery, online, at an art fair, the materials you're using, the amount of labor that's involved? So it's many, many factors. I will say though, pricing does get easier with more experience. And so if you've never priced anything, you've never sold anything, it does feel very overwhelming for a lot of people. But really what you have to do is you just have to put it out there and you have to see what is the reaction. There's nobody I know who can just hit the nail on the head. Like, oh, I did this round of pricing. Oh, it was perfect. Nobody does that, okay? And honestly, that's the way to do it, because once you put it out there and you have some experience of, oh, that didn't go very well, or wow, that was very effective, then you actually have a reference for, oh, this didn't work or this did. Here's another thing. When you price, you are going to mess up. I don't think I know any artist who has felt 100% fabulous about every price or sale they've ever done. I once priced this piece at, it was a sale at the School and Museum of Fine Arts, and I didn't factor in the framing. And so I actually lost money on that sale. It's not because I'm not a smart person, I just didn't think of it. And so stuff like that will happen quite often. So tell yourself it's to mess up a bunch of times, because you learn from those experiences and you take that knowledge and you apply it to all of your future experiences selling. So don't beat yourself up for messing up, because we've all done it multiple times. I mean, I don't know anybody who messed up once and it was fine. No, you will keep messing up, and that's okay. Give you some really concrete strategies for what to consider, but I do think there is a somewhat intuitive approach that can be helpful for some people. So one thing you can measure, what is your comfort level with your prices? And that's a gut reaction. How does that price make you feel? So you ask yourself two things. What is a price for my artwork that is low enough that it actually makes me feel bad? It makes me feel gypped. Like I did all this and oh my gosh, I'm getting nothing back. That wasn't worth it. And I know some artists will say, oh, well, anything will be fine for me. It will be like, I'll make $10. That makes me happy. That is okay in the beginning, but I do think if you plan on selling long-term, that's usually not sufficient enough over time. At a certain point, if the prices stay too low, you can get to a point where you almost feel resentful that people didn't pay you more. And so I would preempt that situation and really think carefully, like, how is this going to make me feel? So for example, this is a print that I made, hand pulled, original print. It's made on a jelly plate, printed on good quality Reeves BFK paper. You can see how big it is compared to my hand. And so I can say to myself, all right, if I price this print $25, to me, that doesn't feel good, because I know how much time I put into it. I know the supplies were not cheap. And don't get me wrong, this is for me. Okay, another person might be like, hey, I'm cool with $25. That's great. But I'm not okay with that. And so you have to understand that it's so specific to the person, your point of view, your approach. Are you very experienced selling? Is this your first time pricing? So keep all those factors in mind. The next thing to ask yourself, what price is high enough that you think you don't deserve it? Now, you do have to be somewhat of a reasonable, humble person for this to work. I'll give you an example. I was running a gallery at Wellesley College, and we had an artist there who had these ink drawings. They weren't gigantic. They were maybe 3 feet tall. They were on rice paper. And he priced the prints, the drawings, for $50,000. I was like, are you crazy? We're a small gallery at a school that's meant for educational purposes. We're not like a big New York City commercial gallery that has collectors and things. And that just felt outrageous to me. I was like, no, not for this context. Maybe if you were in a fancy New York City gallery, sure, but not here. So for me, if I ask people to pay $1,000 for this print, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so ridiculous. That is so much money that for me, it feels sort of embarrassing to make that price that high, okay? So what you're trying to find is you're trying to find the sweet spot. What is the price that you don't feel like you're losing out, but also feels like okay, this is not ridiculous, because I think some of us, we do sort of feel, and I feel this way myself, is like, I'm like, okay, that's just sort of rude to charge that much. But I mean, it doesn't matter. It depends on who you are. Because I mean, in New York City galleries, people have no problem with that. And people have a problem with charging 10,000 for a print. So again, it has lots to do with context. So for me, 200, that's about right for me. Okay. And that's a price that I don't think is outrageous. And I do feel fairly compensated for the amount of time I invested into making it. That said, though, there is somewhat of a food chain that you have to be aware of when it comes to media. So for example, paintings are always at the top. Original paintings are always going to sell more than a hand-pulled print, which is this. Okay, you cannot charge tons and tons of money for a print and then price your painting really low. And that's relative within the artist. I mean, maybe Chuck Close can sell a print for 10,000. I can't do that. But think about that relative to the other piece, because a lot of people will have different types of work. Like somebody might have paintings and prints, maybe they're selling reproductions. So that's not uncommon for people to sell different types of work. In general, drawings tend to be on the lower rung of the food chain. Drawings, because they're usually on paper, don't tend to go for as much as a painting. Sculpture's a little bit trickier. It's just the range of sculpture is so gigantic. I mean, most paintings are, on canvas, your typical painting is like that. But I mean, you could be doing like a miniature sculpture that takes so much time and labor. You could just throw together something on the wall that took no time. So sculpture's a little bit trickier. But the one that's really on the bottom is reproductions. That's pretty easy because you make the artwork once, you upload it, you have it printed multiple times. And so therefore the expectation is, because it's reproduced so much, there's so many copies out there that you can't charge as much as, say, an original artwork. Or there are exceptions. I mean, if you make a print and it's like gigantic and it's on like museum quality paper, yeah, I mean, you're going to charge a lot for that. But for the typical print that people make, it can be pretty basic. So these are the factors you're going to think about for yourself and write these down. What's the size of the artwork? In general, you can't really charge tons and tons of money for something that's really small, unless it's like, again, miniature painting that's very laborious. So if you have a painting, let's say it's 6 inches by 6 inches, usually people have the expectation that if you have a painting that's 2 feet by 4 feet, yes, you are going to charge way more for the bigger artwork. Original artwork versus a print. People pretty much always pay more for an original. And a lot of that has to do with numbers, because if it's original, there's only one out there, okay? But if you're doing a print, say I'm making a print edition, so I have an edition of 10 prints, okay? There are 10 of those prints out there. And let's say I say, okay, I'm not going to print anymore. That's it. That is definitely more valuable than if somebody uploads to Vistaprint, has it printed 500 times. Like there's sort of no end to the number you can put out there. So the number that exists in the universe is absolutely something to think about. Labor, artwork takes time. Some pieces take 15 minutes, some take 80 hours. So you have to factor that in, because it does become impractical at a certain point. Materials. Some materials are really expensive. Others is just a sheet of paper. Although I will encourage all of you, if you're selling artwork, get good supplies, because the archivalness of your material does contribute. If you sell an artwork and it's on newsprint, which is super fragile, yellows over time, easily wrinkled, you just can't charge as much as if it's on like really good quality, say Arches watercolor paper. Because people do get mad. If you sell them an artwork and 2 years later it turns yellow, that's really not a good thing. Here is a really good way to start. If you have no clue where to begin, even if you've done this a few times, just do this. This is a really, really good exercise because it just puts things in perspective and it provides a really concrete reference for you to work with. Do the math. Sit down and add it up. Okay, how much for the supplies? Make an hourly rate for yourself. Say to yourself, okay, am I willing to work for $10 an hour? Am I willing to work for 50? I mean, I usually look at stuff now and I'm like, if I can't make more than 100 an hour, I don't want to do it because I have other things that I make more money on. So it's like, to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. Other people will say, you know what? I don't want to be compensated for the labor, which I don't think is a great idea because again, it can lead to you feeling resentful. But there's other fees on top of that. If you're selling at a gallery, galleries take commission. If you're selling at an art fair, usually they are charging you some fee to participate and get a table at that art fair. So here is a print that I made. It's a one-time print. It's a monotype, so only one exists out there. And I just tallied up how much the supplies cost. So you can see it's a pretty big jelly plate, 16 by 20. This jelly plate's expensive. I mean, I got lucky the manufacturer actually just sent it to me, but it costs 136. And yes, you'll use it multiple times, but that's the cost to initially get that plate. I spent about $20 on ink and $6 on paper. So the total for that is $162 just for art supplies. Then I look at labor. So I say to myself, okay, I am fine working for $50 an hour. That makes sense to me. And you can approximate, okay, this took about 6 hours. So if you multiple 50 by 6, that's $300 you are getting for your labor. And again, if you look at that number 300 and you're like, oh, that's kind of low, you can always pump that up. So it's not an exact science. It's just to see something concrete so you don't feel like you're just grasping for things. Custom framing. Custom framing is really expensive for good reason. The supplies are expensive. It's a very skilled job. And so for me to do like a nice custom frame with a mat cost me $300. I know some people look at that and are horrified, but you know what? That's not unreasonable for custom framing, for like nice, good quality, professional custom framing. Because I went to like a local independent shop that specializes, and you can choose what to do. I mean, some people will just get a pre-made frame, other people don't frame. So that's a whole other conversation. But anyway, so here's the thing though. I showed this at a gallery. The gallery takes 50% commission. Now I know, again, some people look at that number, go, oh my God, 50%. Like, that's outrageous. It's not, it's the standard. And so if a gallery charges less than 50%, that is outside the norm. Usually it's like a nonprofit gallery. They'll take like 40 or 30%, but your standard commercial gallery will ask for 50%. So here's the thing. The custom frame was 300. Okay, that's an expense. So if I do 300 times 2, that is $600 for a gallery price. And I have not factored in labor. I have not factored in supplies yet. So if I just charge 600, it covers the framing. I don't make any profit yet. Okay, so now you say, okay, the custom frame with the gallery commission costs $600, okay, for the price. If I want to make an artist profit, let's say I tack on the 300 that I calculated, but to make money, I have to times it by 2 to make 300 because of the gallery commission. That's another $600, okay? So I add the two $600, $1,200 becomes the retail price. It adds up really, really fast. And I can tell you for a lot of people, showing at a gallery is sometimes really not worth the expense. I mean, I just did this for fun because I hadn't done a gallery show in a long time. And so I wasn't really that worried about making money, but it's like, wow, $1,200 for that 16 by 20 print. And that's just if I want to make a profit. I mean, you could certainly say, okay, well, screw my profit. I'm going to sell it for 600, but then you make nothing, which I don't think ever feels good for anybody. question you have to ask yourself that I think a lot of people have not really taken the time to think about. So ask yourself these two questions. Will you financially rely on selling your art? Most people do not. It's really something, it takes time to establish yourself. It's a crazy amount of work to make the connections you need to make to be able to sell your art, or it's just a crazy amount of marketing you have to do on social media, okay? So what I say to people, okay, maybe that's your long-term goal. Maybe long-term, you do want to have the bulk of your income come from sales, but that does not happen overnight. So what I say to people is, don't quit your full-time job, stay with the job, just incrementally build up towards that. And I know a lot of people eventually, because they keep going, they do get to that point. And by the way, don't invest your worth in how much you sell, because the reasons people buy artwork are so arbitrary and you really cannot predict. Because I've put stuff in my shop and I'm like, no one's going to buy this. They buy it. I put something in, I'm like, oh, this is really good. Nobody buys it. So please don't measure your self-worth based on that. And by the way, I'm curious if people have seen this. In my Instagram ads, there's all these artist sites that are like, I taught this artist to sell and they sold out all 15 paintings in 3 weeks because of I'm like, okay, you guys are just lying. Okay, because even the most successful artists I know are not doing that. It's really, I mean, it's like 3 people on the planet that can do that. So don't believe that crap. Or selling for fun. My selling approach, I don't think this is common. My shop is like a yard sale. I'm like, oh, well, this stuff, if I don't put it online, it's just going to sit in a portfolio. So I guess I'll just throw them up. And I don't put any effort into it because I'm too busy doing other things. So I don't actively promote my shop. It's just sitting there. And once in a while, people buy things. It's not that often. But for me, I'm like, oh, whatever, because it's not my primary form of income and it's not my main focus. So you have to ask yourself, why are you selling? What are you trying to get out of the experience? Another thing to consider, pricing your artwork. It's relative within each artist, okay? I can't sell a print for 10,000. Chuck Close can, which means his paintings can go for 100,000, okay? So the 100,000 and the 50,000, it makes sense within Chuck Close's studio practice. So maybe for this artist, a hand-pulled print, they're charging 100. Therefore, because oil paintings are higher up on the food chain, they can charge 500 for the oil painting, as an example. Now, maybe there's a second artist and they don't want to price as high. So they make their hand-pulled print 50 and they charge 100 for their oil painting. So it's not a hard number, like, oh, this should be 3 times this. It's just within the artist and what they do, what type of paintings they make, how time intensive are their prints. That's what matters. Now, what's tricky though, is that some hand-pulled prints take even longer than a painting. So I could do a print, took me 6 hours. This painting only took me an hour. But you know what? I'm sorry to tell you this, but nobody cares. They really don't care how long you spent on it. They want the price. You will care, and you can factor that in, but don't try to price based on necessarily, oh, well, this took me 10 minutes. I can't price it higher because it only took me 10 minutes. Because, wow, people will pay for things and they don't know that it took 10 minutes. So why not mess with that? Prices as you gain experience. You're going to keep doing this all the time. It sort of never stops. And I can tell you that these are some of my best-selling drawings on my shop. I don't know why. Like, I look at I'm like, why would you want this? It's messy. It's got fingerprints all over it. I don't know. People like these. So originally, when I first put them on my shop, I listed them for $50 because I was like, oh, these are fast. These are just gesture drawings. They take me like 10 minutes to make. I can't charge that much. But you know what? They sold so well that now the prices are much higher. because I know people like them. And I would never know that if I hadn't put them out there first. So yeah, some people who may be watching you may be like, oh my God, it's 200 now. Well, too bad. It's like, that's what it is. It's nobody's business if you decide to revise your prices. The one thing that I think doesn't look great though is lowering them. So if these originally sold for 50 and I'm like, oh man, I haven't sold one in a long time, maybe I should lower it to 40. I don't recommend doing that because I think it's just, it makes it almost feel like you don't value yourself. And so what most people do is they usually price a little lower so they don't get themselves into that situation, but that can also work against you too. So we'll go over that in a little bit. I think this is one of the most important exercises that you can do. Research. Look at artist shops that are selling things that are sort of similar to what you're doing. This really puts things in perspective because you look at it. For example, this is Blacktop Market, one of my staff, Dorian Epps, and his shop sells hoodies and t-shirts and all kinds of apparel, okay? And if you look at the work, you can say, oh, well, I'm doing apparel as well. I also use silk screen and I also do upcycle fashion, which is what Dorian does. This is a silk screen t-shirt. So if you're a silk screen artist who does t-shirts, look at his shop and say, how much is he paying? Because we really don't know until we see those numbers. So if we look at some of his listings, you can say one t-shirt is 50. Another one has been knocked down. I mean, that's a little different. Sometimes you can have a sale and be like, oh, this weekend only, this is 50% off. That's different than like lowering your prices permanently, okay? And so you can say, okay, $50 is not unreasonable for a handmade t-shirt. Then you find another shop that makes silkscreen t-shirts, and maybe they're selling the shirts for $10, okay? And if you look at it and you say, oh, $10, that's it? That's usually not a good sign. So look at other artists. If you are an oil painter and you paint flowers that are about 8 inches by 10 inches, fairly small, go find somebody else that does that same thing. Go to Etsy, type in oil painting flowers. Look at all the shops that are selling those types of things. And at the very least, it just gives you a range to say, oh, that is what some people are charging. This feels too low. So basically what you do is you just judge the shop. Like, what is your reaction? People don't oftentimes do that. And a lot of times what artists do on their social media or whatever, it doesn't align with their own reactions. And so I've done that with social media too, is I'll actually observe my own behavior. Like I'll go to an Instagram and let's say I look at the profile and then I leave right away. I don't bother to look at anything. And I say, well, why didn't I bother? Why did I not stay and linger? A lot of times, oh, this person only has 2 posts. I'm out of here, okay? Other times it's, this looks kind of boring. So you ask yourself those questions when you go to that shop. Why do I like this shop? What is it about this shop that makes me trust it? Or what's a feature of this shop that I'm like, oh, this is sort of sketchy. I don't really want to buy from this person. It's very revealing. The other thing, you can price, actually you should price differently depending on the venue. So if you have a print and you price it $100 in your online shop, it should not be $100 if it's in a gallery. And people don't realize this. A lot of people think that, oh, this print is 100, it's always 100. No, venue is absolutely critical to think about. Now, the only circumstance where you can't do this is if you have an exclusive agreement with the gallery. So the gallery represents you, they're in charge of all your sales. You can't open an online shop and sell there. They'll be really mad at you. But this is not a common situation for a lot of people. And honestly, if you get to this stage, the gallery will explain those things. But you do have to price on the venue. Because you know what? Selling online versus selling in a gallery, it's like night and day. What works online is not going to work in a gallery. And you have to keep that in mind. Everything changes. At a gallery, the most critical thing, again, that 50% commission. So if I have a print and I usually sell it online for 100, and I say, oh, I'm going to sell it for 100 at the gallery, you're only getting $50. So your profit gets cut in half when you get to a gallery. And I know a lot of people really balk at the 50% commission. They say, oh my gosh, that's such a ripoff. It's not though, especially if it's a good gallery. There's some galleries, yeah, I wouldn't do it because sometimes they just don't have a good setup, but a good, legit gallery, they're going to have a client list, collectors, people who regularly buy artwork. The gallery does marketing for you. They'll put an ad in, I don't know, art forum, whatever publication. They have their own Instagram. Chances are their Instagram is bigger than yours. They will do all the financials. When you make a sale, you don't have to do anything. You just get a check from them or whatever. And so the thing about that 50% commission, it does feel like a lot, but if I sell online, where's my client list? I don't have one. The galleries take time to do, they will show things to collectors, they will bring people in, they will host the opening. And so this concept that galleries do nothing for you is not true, unless you're with a crappy gallery, in which case you have to keep an eye out for those red flags. I do have a video on that on YouTube if people want to know. So the whole thing about a gallery is because it's brick and mortar, there's such an investment. And the other thing about a gallery is if you have a solo show or even a group show, it's not up there forever. Usually a solo show is a month. And then after that, yeah, you're probably on the gallery website if you have representation, but more likely your work is going to disappear after. So it's like it could conceivably be you only have one solo show a year with that gallery, which is not uncommon. Whereas if you decide to sell online, that work's just always there. You're not closing your shop. Like you can think about your solo show closes and then the work doesn't have the visibility that it would have all the time. So the thing about selling online is, yes, you make 100% profit. You sell that print for 100, you get $100 and it's great. But guess what? You have to do everything. You have to find your own clients. You have to have your own financial system, send your own invoice, do all your own marketing. And oh my goodness, the marketplace now selling art online, it's so saturated. I mean, let's say you're a jewelry artist. Just imagine how many Etsy shops sell jewelry. And so there's a huge amount of competition. It's really hard to stand out. And I think most artists, most of us were not born with marketing skills. It's very hard. It's nothing to do with you as an artist. It's like saying, oh my gosh, Clara, weren't you born to snowboard? I'm like, no, I was not. I can do the art stuff, but I can't snowboard. It's like that. I did it once and I spent the whole day on my butt. So yeah, that wasn't fun. So really, if you want to sell your artwork beyond just like a one-off to a family friend, you are starting a business. And that's why selling online is so much work, because you have to do everything. There's nobody there to do it for you, or you have to have the money to hire people to do your taxes, to do your financials. And that depends on the person, but you do have to think about sales tax. You have to get the certificate from Department of Revenue. It's a lot. A gallery, you don't have to deal with any of that. It's actually really nice to write your own contracts. I mean, it's easier if you do it on a platform like Etsy, where they just automatically create the invoice for you. So if you sell on your website, that's when you really have to do everything. But that's another conversation. So in our shop, if you take a look at it, okay, these are some of the prices. These are hand-pulled prints. These are time-consuming to make. They're on really good quality paper. This one's priced for $300. I get $300. And yeah, that feels great. But you know what? Most of the time, people are not selling out 6 of these a week. It's not common. Another option, and I actually think everybody who can should try this, because this is not just selling at the art fair, but oh my gosh, getting to see people's reaction to your artwork in real time, talking to them. I mean, some people will just look and that's fine. But there are some people who talk to you and they'll say things like, oh, I love this, or this is so cool, or, oh, are you going to make more? And I've actually had people told me, yeah, this person didn't buy anything at the art fair, but they did buy something later online. So art fairs, I think that they're just a really good testing ground for you to see people's reactions in real time, because when people buy online, you don't see the reactions. You don't even know who's visiting. And so selling at an art fair, really good experience. So you get, again, 100% profit, but you got to watch out for the event fees. And this largely depends on the type of art fair. For example, if you're doing some local art fair and it's in your town and it's just local people, probably the booth is not that expensive. Maybe it's like $20, okay? There are some shows, for example, I think it was Mocha Fest was in Brooklyn. I had 2 former students who did that, and that place is packed. People spend money to get into the fair. Like, to visit the fair, it costs you like $10. So they're not just showing up, they paid money to come to the fair. Okay, so they come, it's in New York, it's mobbed, there's so many people, but guess what? An event like that, they're not going to charge you $10 for a booth. And some places will charge you extra if you want a bigger table or if you want a tent or whatever. So some of these fees can add up over time, but you can do very well at an event. I mean, I know some people, they make like 4 figures at an event. And so give this a try, because the other thing too is you get to see other artists. And so I was once at Jamaica Plain Open Studios, which is sort of like an art fair. Open Studio is a little bit different, but it's almost essentially the same thing. And so at Open Studios, there would be like 4, maybe 8 artists in a single room. And so I'd be there with my table, but I got to see the other artists, and it's so revealing because, again, observe your own behavior. Go to an artist's booth and say, oh, well, I wasn't interested. And it's like, why not? You have to ask yourself, oh, wow, I love this. How come I like this? Why is this really inviting to people? So for example, I once went to an Open Studios event, and oh my gosh, it is so clear who has their act together. In fact, you don't even have to exhibit at an art fair. You could just go to an art fair as a visitor and observe. Okay, so I went to an Open Studios event here in Salt Lake City, and one woman had a spectacular booth. And I thought, why? First of all, she had this old-fashioned sewing machine that she had on site. She had samples of all her materials. So we got to see her process. She was the only person in that event that showed her process. And guess what? I stuck around longer because I asked her, oh, what is this thread? And oh, where did you get the, those are questions that she invited by having that there. About original art versus prints. And basically, original art is always going to sell for more, pretty much, within the same artist. Okay, again, because it's one of the kind, versus prints. Now, prints are very, very handy to have, and you can do very well with them. But again, you have to know what you're going into. So one of the things that I didn't realize when I first started showing my work online in a shop, I had no idea what the terminology was. I mean, maybe it's because I'm an old fart, but I had no idea that there was a difference between a, quote, hand-pulled print versus just a print, a digital print. I mean, people will call it different things, but basically the digital print is I shot a photo of the original. Let's say, upload it to Vistaprint. I have them print it on demand and then ship it out. Okay, the hand-pulled print is different. Like that was made on a printmaking press, and there's probably a limited number. And so that's a hand-pulled print. So anybody who does like etching or relief or lithography, that is a hand-pulled print. And so I was listing them as just print because I was like, oh, it's a print, but it's not, it's a hand-pulled print. And so that specificity in terminology is really, really going to help you. Now, there are a billion options now for prints, okay? Print on demand versus a local printer. Now, print on demand, they've made it so easy for people. I mean, I would not be surprised, print on demand, if it's like 10 clicks, maybe less, to get something uploaded, put on demand in a shop, and then people buy. And you have to do anything. It's print on demand. And so people are buying stuff and the platform is selling it. And so once you upload, you're done. That's it. So that's very appealing for a lot of people. And there's so many platforms. We actually do have a page on artprof.org where we have platform recommendations and we explain, okay, this is the difference between Vistaprint and Modern Postcard and moo.com, all these different places. So again, do your research on the platform. But if you want something that is better quality, where you can really control things, a local printer is what I recommend. Now, a lot of people don't think about this because they just think, oh, everybody's doing print on demand. It's so easy. I'll do that too. Okay. And yes, finding a local printer, talking to them, it is more time. I mean, you have to get there and talk to them and everything, but oh my gosh, it's so much better if you care about it. Some people don't care. That's fine. But a local printer, it's like you develop a relationship with them. You don't just drop off your stuff and say, yeah, I'll have it by Wednesday. No, you go and you talk to them. They show you samples. Oh, here are the different papers. Here are the different formats. And they will oftentimes make recommendations for you that you never ever thought about. And so go to a local printer and talk to them. Ask them questions. What do you recommend for this? Would it look better like this? Nothing is going to substitute that online. Vistaprint is not going to do that for you. There's nobody there that you can say, oh, magically teleport the papers to me so I can touch them. So again, it depends on the person. I'm sort of a control freak, so I would always opt for this. But you know, what's funny is one of my students had a local printer where she was working for a while. She loved him. They had a great relationship, to the point that when she moved away to another city, she kept sending him her stuff because he knew what her work was like, what she needed. And so this really is worth it because again, materials play a part. If you use like the cheapest paper, you can't charge that much. If you get nice quality archival paper, I know some people will print prints on a home printer and just go to Staples and buy regular Xerox paper. And that's okay if you want to do that. I'm just saying that there's a range and that prints are not that straightforward. It takes research and time to figure that out. So for example, here we have, this is the original illustration, which is digital. And I do find when you're selling stuff online, this photo, I mean, yeah, the illustration doesn't look as good as it does here. But does everybody see there's a hand up there? So people can quickly see how big it is. Because again, pricing does have to do with size. If this person printed this digital illustration as a 3-foot tall print on really, really nice paper, you're gonna wanna get that money back. And I've done that myself where I went to a printer, I got really, really nice paper. And yes, it was pricey, but that meant I could price more because the quality of the material was so high. I didn't feel bad doing that. Here's another thing. And I didn't know this until somebody said something to me at Open Studios. Low prices can absolutely work against you. So I know a lot of artists, I think, the tendency for most people is to underprice. I know very few artists who overprice. Most of the time, people are severely underpricing themselves, but they can work against you. So people will, in your head, you're sort of saying, okay, well, I could sell it for 50, but if I sell it for 40, that will make people want to buy it more because it's less. I mean, yeah, in some circumstances, it is fine. It's like, okay, these are bananas. I mean, these are organic, but I don't know, for me, it's not a big difference. And so I'll just buy whatever. But this really woke me up. So I had somebody at Open Studios and they're going through my work. And again, I was treating the work like a yard sale because I just was like, yeah, I don't care. So I had a lot of these gesture drawings and I priced some for like $10. And they were on not amazing paper, but like decent paper. And gesture drawings that, I don't know, maybe took me 15 minutes, less than that to make. And this woman comes and she's looking at my prices and she's shaking her head as she says this, "Your prices are too low." And I just was like, oh my, so crappy about myself. In that moment, I was like, oh my God, why is she almost scolding me that my prices are too low? Like, why isn't she saying, oh, cool, they're so low, I can buy up a whole bunch? But here's my example for the reasoning behind this. People here probably have bought things online, on Amazon, whatever, because you need to read 500 reviews before you make a decision on which printer you want to buy. And I did this very recently. And so I'm going through all the printers, all right? And actually, this drove me kind of crazy, but like a lot of the printers have very similar profiles. Like, oh, they have all this one has a laser thing, and this one will teleport you back in time. I mean, they'll like all say the same thing, right? But the thing is, you look at those listings, you're like, they all say the same thing, but $50, but this one's 100. Why? Like, why is one more expensive? And I think most people in their head will say, oh, well, it must be more because it's better. That's not always the case, but sometimes it is. And I'm actually uncomfortable buying the cheaper printer because I'm like, no, I don't want the cheaper printer. I want to make sure it's better. The price is higher, so that for some reason in my head is an indication that that printer is better, even though that is not always the case. So the whole thing about setting your prices too low is that it does not always work for you. And people can quickly devalue what you make because the price is so low. So a low price, oftentimes it is not what spurs people to buy something. Sometimes it's, somebody told me they sold at an art fair watercolor painting of a cat. And so you think, oh, it must be because that watercolor is so good. No, the woman who bought it said, oh my gosh, that looks just like my cat. I have to buy it. And so that's why she bought it. It wasn't because the technique was incredible, but that was what compelled her to buy that print. So people buy things for all kinds of random reasons that are so difficult to understand. Here's another thing that's important. And again, this is so case by case. Some people may not do this, but I do think it's helpful. Have a broad range of prices. And you know something? The top of the capital A art world artists, people who are internationally renowned, they have this, okay? May not to the degree that we have. I don't think they're gonna sell their work for $5, but even somebody like Will Cotton, who is a very shishi New York City painter, his oil paintings sell for thousands and thousands of dollars, but he also makes prints. And so because they're prints, they're less. And so even he at that level selling paintings for 300K, he still has a broad range of prices. And it depends on the artist, but it does, number one, makes people stick around. So when I go to an Etsy shop, is there 3 listings, I'm out of there. But if I see, oh, this person has stuff for $100, for $50, for $25, it makes me want to hang out and be like, well, I could get this, or maybe I could get 3 of this. And honestly, sometimes those prices, because they're lower, $25, people will actually go, oh, they're 25, I'm going to buy 3 of them. So that's another mindset, because you know something, for some people, you might sell a sticker for $1, but I can tell you, oh my gosh, I have 2 teens, they love stickers. They're always buying stickers off Etsy. And so for some people, it doesn't make sense to have stickers, and that's okay, but they add up. And a lot of people will not just buy 1, they'll buy 10 or they'll buy 3. And it doesn't have to be a sticker. It could be something else. But people love stickers. They put them on their laptops. They put them on their water bottles, very precious real estate for your teenager. And the great thing about merch, which again is another lecture, means that you don't always have to create original artwork to sell it. Because I know some people feel that pressure. They say, okay, well, I want to sell my original artwork. Oh, I have to pump out 3 paintings a year every month to make that worth it. But it's like, sometimes you can't. Life catches up and, oh, you had to stop painting for a few weeks. That's fine, totally understandable. But when you make merch, that means you can keep making products to sell, but you're not actually making new original artwork. Like that is fine. That's for a lot of artists, that's almost a relief to feel like, oh, I don't always have to pump out a painting a week to make this sustainable. You can also have bundle discounts. This is really, really helpful. So you can say to people, okay, I have all these prints. They're priced for $50 each. If you buy 2, I'll give you the 3rd print 50% off. I mean, I've done this. Like one time I was at the shoe store and they were like, oh, if you buy 1 pair of shoes, the second one is 50%. I'm like, oh man, I'm buying that. I did not need that 2nd pair of shoes, but I wanted the 50% discount. So I bought it. And I think people are the same way with artwork. They say, oh, I got this great discount. Now I can get this one for a lot less. So you'll find you do have to get into the head of a customer, because you know something, I always see artists, they promote their shops to other artists. Like we have a Discord at Art Prof where, you know, people can interact. And I find people are always trying to promote their artist shops in the Discord, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you know something, most people who buy art are not artists. And so you have to get inside their mind. For example, I make a big example. I have all kinds of artist friends. I know not everybody does, but because I have some artist friends, I never buy artwork. I know I should to support people, but so much of the time people are giving it to me. I'll sometimes do a trade with somebody. And so ask yourself, as an artist, do you buy other people's artwork? I think we all should. It's a great way to support ourselves. But as artists, it's not really our first impulse. For other people, though, who are not artists, it is a very special thing to own an original artwork. I can also tell you that for a lot of people, when they buy from an artist, sometimes it's not really about the artwork. Sometimes it's about the artist. So for example, this is Lauren Welch. She's somebody on my staff. And people love Lauren because she's just the nicest person. She's so generous. She's funny. People really like her personality. She's also a brilliant artist. So I'm not saying she's not. But the thing is, you will find, because people follow people on social media, that sometimes people, it's not about the artwork, but they want to support you. They like your work so much, they want to help you out and they want to own something from you. Okay. Like, I'm a big fan of Hugh Jackman. If Hugh Jackman opened an online art store with his artwork, I'd be right there in a second. I would buy everything. Not because necessarily the art is good, but because, oh, I want to own something that Hugh Jackman made. So it's like that for a lot of people. I have fans that follow me online, and a lot of people, they just want to own something that I made. And sometimes it doesn't matter if it's a great artwork or not. People don't have to buy your masterpieces for this to be profitable. Last thing, don't forget about shipping and packing expenses. These are the types of things people don't remember because it's an added expense that happens after the artwork is done, it's listed, you've written the description. And this can get expensive. It depends, again, on the amount of artwork you have. But if you're shipping a big painting, that is not cheap. Depends on if you want to do free shipping. Some artists do that. I don't. I just say you pay for it. Other people, you can just buy a plastic sleeve, which doesn't cost that much. You stick it in a bubble mailer, you're fine. But if you're, say, shipping a sculpture and it's very fragile, you got to wrap that thing in bubble wrap. You have to get a nice box. You have to go to the post office. Like, these are all things that you have to think about if you're selling online, let's say you're shipping it to a gallery, you have to do that too. And to figure out with the gallery, who's going to pay for this? Is it you or me? And sometimes it's not clear. Some places are very frustrating. Like I had a artwork at a show at a school, college, I'm not going to say who, they shall remain nameless. And they were terrible about getting my artwork back to me. They were so bad about it that I just broke down and said, you know what, whatever, I'll pay for it. And I had to I was furious about how terrible they were. And so the shipping and packaging, this is a whole thing. So definitely don't take this for granted at all. Okay, so that is the lecture portion of the workshop. Sapira, how about we jump into the Q&A? Because I know we have a couple questions in there. And also, if anybody wants me to review your Instagram, your shop, I'm happy to go through that. It's really nice to have concrete examples to talk about. You can drop those in the chat. So Sapira, how about we get into some of the questions?
Sounds good. So Claire asked, where do signed limited edition prints fall into the pyramid?
Okay. Do you want to get people on voice? Sapira?
Sure.
Okay.
Claire, I'm going to allow you to talk and you can unmute and ask your question too.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, so I just saw this and I was thinking about this through your presentation, and you touched on it a little bit, you know, that having limited edition prints can affect the pricing, but I just kind of wanted to know a little bit more specifically if you have a thought about that.
Yeah. First of all, just to address the signing part, you have to sign everything. This is in the previous lecture I did about selling online, which is that if you don't sign stuff, people really don't like that. Like I have learned it the hard way where people are mad. So I would just sign everything because it just keeps you protected.
Now, if you're doing print on demand, though, you're not able to sign it because it's being sent out directly, correct?
Right. So for print on demand, I don't think people have that expectation, but for hand pulled print, absolutely, they are going to want that.
And when you go to sign, do you recommend pencil, what weight, or ink?
Pencil is pretty much what for a print. I mean, if it's a painting, obviously you're going to use oil paint or something. I've had people say to me, oh, but in pencil, what if somebody erases it? I guess, but I'm sorry to say, but most of us are not famous enough for people to want to have that level of fraud with our artwork. So it is a standard. Like it actually looks weird if you do it in pen because nobody else does that.
Yeah. And do you have thoughts about putting the title of the piece on to also write that in or pre-print it? I did that once where I pre-printed the title, but then I thought, well, I don't know, is that adding or detracting? Because I like to know the name and the way I name work is related, but is that also detrimental to other buyers?
What kind of print was it?
It was on like a archival hand-mule rag from Cashman.
And what type of printmaking process was it?
This is a reproduction. This is a reproduction of a painting. So this is a
okay.
That's what I'm talking about. Sorry, I'm talking about, yeah, about reproduction. I mean, I guess it goes both ways. Hand pulled prints you can do in addition versus reproductive prints you can do in addition. So I was talking more specifically about reproduction limited editions.
You can, I mean, again, it depends on what type of print you're doing, but usually the place where people expect a written title, signature date, and edition number is on a print like this, which is a hand pulled print. So traditionally, that is the professional standard. People expect to see that title. But I think on, say, a digital print, there is not that expectation because print dealers have their whole other universe of standards that don't apply to those other places.
So you're saying it's just not important, or that wouldn't affect the pricing necessarily to create a limited edition in a particular size on a particular type of paper for a reproduction?
I mean, limited edition is absolutely going to be more valuable per print than if you just have an open-ended run of prints.
Right.
But I can tell you that if you're just getting started, most people will not care that it's limited edition. Only until you get like really major visibility that people are like, oh my God, there's only 3 wool cottons, and you've got collectors fighting over those 3 prints. So I think if you're just getting started, don't stress about it so much, but be aware that as you get higher visibility, it may be a better option, because sometimes people make a big deal out of it. Like, huge, like limited edition, get these 3. And it's like, it almost makes you not want to buy it because it looks so desperate.
Right. It's a kind of false scarcity because I could make as many as I want. And there's an argument for having your work being more accessible, that yes, anyone can buy it. 1 million people can buy it. Great. But balancing that, like you talked about the value of an original, then you have that. And so that's why I've wondered if, if you're doing a digital reproduction, does that make it more, more desirable or differentiate it from an open-ended run by physically signing it or adding a title or something?
Signature and title does not affect the price. Okay. So I think the expectation is that all the artwork you sell should be signed unless it's print on demand. But you'll find that people want to see the signature enough, I think, that when I post something in my shop, the photo I take has the signature. I don't add the signature after, because I want people to see where it is. Because one thing people really don't like is if they buy the print thinking there's a signature, shows up without one, that's not good.
Right. Got it. Yeah. And I guess my paintings are signed also. So that answers that, I guess. Thanks.
Thanks, Claire. All right. How about Samantha?
All right, Samantha. I'm going to allow Samantha to talk. Samantha, you can speak now if you want to unmute.
And it's okay, Samantha, if you don't want to speak on voice. I'm happy to answer anybody's questions without speaking on voice, but let us know if you want to unmute, Samantha. Okay, well, I'm going to answer, and Samantha, if you happen to come on, that's great, but no problem if you can't. Absolutely, supplies are tax deductible, and we actually have a whole stream that goes through taxes. And I mean, basically anything you do for your art practice, you can deduct. So custom framing, if you hire somebody to make you canvas panels, I mean, I deduct coffee shop stuff because I'm like, oh, I'm at the coffee shop, I'm drawing, this counts. So, I mean, it depends on what you're comfortable with, obviously, but absolutely art supplies for sure. Okay, Sapira, how about we look at April?
Sounds good. Let me bring up April.
Hello. I've never made prints before of my original paintings, and I was wondering if it's okay to make a print of an original painting if that painting has already been sold.
Okay, a great question, and it comes up all the time. So this is very important for people to know. A lot of people that buy because they don't know, I mean, it's not their fault that they don't know, will think that because they own the physical artwork, they own the image. They do not. You as the artist, you hold the copyright for that image. And so absolutely, you can keep selling that painting as a print once you've sold the original to somebody else. But you have to make this very clear to people because they have no idea. And there's also other circumstances where people will buy the rights to the image, okay? And I mean, this is a whole other thing. We actually have 2 streams on YouTube with a lawyer. So just type in Art Prof lawyer, you'll find them. But basically, you own the image, okay? But you can also sell the rights. And you can do it differently. You can say, okay, one-time rights. I'm going to let you use this painting for your book cover. I've done that several times, okay? But beyond that, you're not allowed to use it, okay? And I'm always very explicit. I'll say, yes, you can put it on Instagram. Yes, you can put it here. If you want to print a brochure, you have to do this. And so you have to be very explicit with the person. There are options. You can say, oh, I'm going to sign away all my rights. So I'm going to sell 100% rights of this image to you, and then you can do whatever you want. You can splash it in Times Square. I will not make any profit from that. I do not recommend that to anybody. I think that's a terrible idea because I mean, there's already so many copyright issues for artists. And I think you just never know where your work is going to go. I mean, even for like a big company like Disney, I mean, they can do whatever they want. So keep an eye out for that because that can get tricky.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we've got Nicole.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Cool, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it today.
Sure.
So I mean, I have my hands in many things. I do murals, I paint store windows, I do pet portrait commissions, and I teach painting parties. So I do all that. Yeah, a little bit of everything.
You're busy.
But yeah, I'm trying to stay busy. And I'm actually getting laid off from my 9-to-5 job, which is a production artist for a t-shirt company. So
Sorry to
now
hear that.
that's okay. It just, I feel like it gives me time to flex my wings and get out to do the other stuff I've been side hustling for 20 years. So I'm excited about that, right?
Right.
So I guess I think I live in a smaller market. I'm in Reno, Nevada. So I don't, I don't think I could charge like Los Angeles prices or whatnot.
Sure.
But I just don't really know. Like, I think I've been undercharging for years, and I've been charging by the hour for like my mural and window work.
Mhm.
And so like, I mean, I don't really charge like $40 an hour. And I just, when I'm given the quote, I'll go to them and I'll be like, yeah, I think this will take me about 8 hours. And then so it'll be great, and they'll call me back to do it.
Mhm.
And should I convert to doing by the square footage, or should I consider the difficulty, or what do you think? I just don't want to lose people
Of
because
course.
maybe I overcharged, and bit off more than I could chew. But then I do find, how you talked about feeling resentful if you undercharge. I
Yeah.
do feel that once in a while, less
Yeah.
now because experience, but I do encounter that sometimes.
I can tell you most artists undercharge.
Yep.
And I've been in so many circumstances where I'm like, I'm just going to ask for another 100 and it's fine. Honestly, the people for whom $50 is a deal breaker, those
Yep.
are people that are not really worth your time because
Okay.
they're trying to skim everything. And so usually a company that knows your worth and is respectful of you will charge you what you want. I mean, they don't like it, they can hire someone else. And I know sometimes it feels bad to lose a gig. I mean, when does it not? But you may be dodging a bullet because I've had some clients who are horrifically difficult to work with, and they're most of the time people that don't pay as much.
Okay. And I'll get back to too about the mural pricing, but
Sure.
I also wanted to ask about edits. So say like I do price in the edits with like, okay, I'll do this for you plus one edit, and then do you charge per edit after that, or do you cap the edits, or how do you prefer?
Well, I do this with portrait commissions. When I did them a long time ago,
Yes.
I would make them sign something that says, I agree, this is finished. Okay. And I understand that if I want anything else beyond this point, I'm going to be charged more. That's very important because, oh my God, some clients will so abuse that. Like, I know one of my former students, she said this company, they just kept bothering her. Like, can you do this? Can you do? And the thing is, she had to do it because she didn't have that clause that got them to go away. And so what happens is when you have that clause, people often say, oh, that's not worth it. But if you don't do that, they will bother you to no end. It's absurd.
Okay. All right. And then, about the mural question, I guess, any recommendations?
How big are the murals?
I'm scared to get on a scissor lift, so they're the shorter ones.
Okay.
Not higher than 8 feet tall.
Okay. How wide?
Could be anywhere from like a kid's baby nursery, one accent wall, 8 feet by 8 feet, or it could be, 100 feet by 8 feet. It just depends.
Oh, wow. So you've definitely got a range. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, a mural is a perfect example. Size matters. It really does. If you're painting a baby nursery, it's not the same thing as like the scope of this epic mural that's outdoors. And so I think in your head, you can charge by the hour, but don't tell them how long it takes, because these are the types of jobs where it's much better just to say, oh, it's 3,000, as opposed to saying, well, it'll take me 8 hours, $40. Like, they don't need to know.
Okay, that's literally like you're saying exactly how I would be vocalizing it in front of them. Like, as I'm playing it out in my head and I'm saying that, well, I think this is going to be 16 hours at least. Yeah, okay, so just keep that hush hush to myself, and okay, I like that. Okay, I can totally do that.
I'll be honest with all of you, but those figure drawings that I was talking about that used to be $50 that are now priced at $300, those took me 10 minutes to make.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
Them. So it's like, nobody needs to, like, there's only so much information that your client needs. And I find for a big project like that, lump sum is almost always better, because the by the hour, it's like, always, I find with a lot of projects, it's always more work than I think it's going to be. So if I'm like, oh, it's going to take 10 hours and it takes 12, that kind of
because you
sucks.
can't walk away from the project. Yeah, you're like, oh, I would fix this, I would fix that. And then before I know it, perfectionism kind of pulls you away from what you quoted.
Yep. So
thank you.
Don't share everything.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
Yep. All right, we have Joanna up next.
Let me find Joanna. All right, Joanna, you are allowed to talk.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Thank you. So when I first started pricing my original paintings, I sort of was doing them by which ones I thought were probably a little better than others. And so I had varieties of prices, and that was just getting really confusing.
Yeah.
And I ended up adopting a price per square inch model, just as a, simplification. And I tend to do certain standard sizes over and over again. So some paintings, they take maybe an hour. Others may take 2 or 3 days for, the same size, depending on what's going on in the painting. And I work mostly abstract. And some paintings resolve themselves quicker than others and take longer to figure out. But so I've just been going by that method, and I just wanted some feedback on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's one way that people do price their the one took 30 hours, because you never know with an artwork, okay? Just as a basis of comparison. If you're doing it by square footage, both of those paintings are going to be the same price, even though one took so much longer to do. And I don't think square footage is a great way to measure it, because the amount of labor is so vastly different depending on the artwork that you'll end up with very disparate prices if you end up doing that. I also think that out of all the considerations that I mentioned, all the factors, I feel like the labor is the most important thing to think about, because it's your time. Your time is so valuable. Yeah, you have to spend money on supplies, but that is the part for me that is, it sounds dramatic, the most emotional in terms of work, because like materials, it's like, yeah, that costs $10 to buy that paper, fine, okay, but it's like my time, blood, sweat, and tears I put into this, and putting it down to square footage, I think doesn't value your labor as much.
Okay, so if you have, let's say I've got 3 20 by 20 paintings in a show side by side, and they're all at different pricing, do you think that's okay to show that?
If they're the exact same size, same media, same type of image, you mean?
Yeah, probably, like they would be a series.
Okay, that would look weird. You would
Yeah,
have
it
to
would
price
look
them the
weird.
same. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
So
Okay.
that's another thing too, is if I show you guys my Etsy shop, this is for Art Prof, but if you go in and let's click on ink drawings, you'll see all 4 of these are the same amount. And
Right.
yeah, one took longer, but nobody's
Mhm.
going to want to say, oh, this took her 10 hours, therefore she gets to charge 50 more because the other one took 8. You know, it's like in our heads as artists, that's what we're thinking about, but the customer does not think about that stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's trial and error, honestly. I mean, if you've
Right.
been doing that square footage and it's been working great, do it. But if it's just making things confusing for you or making you frustrated, you always have to think about sustainability, because in the beginning, when you start selling, you're probably not going to sell out every week. Okay. But you have to say to yourself, well, maybe at some point I will be selling 5 paintings a month. What is sustainable? Because I did that with my social media following, where I was like, oh, I'll do this for you guys. And then after we hit a certain number of subscribers, I was like, oh, I can't keep this up anymore.
Okay, great.
Great. Anything else, Joanna? We've got time, so I don't mind.
Let's see. I did just have a thought and it flew out of my head.
Of course it did.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess my hours aren't so crazy apart from each other on each painting that it's not like I spend 1 hour on one and then 300 hours on another.
Yeah.
You know, they're all at about the same level of detail. I think it's just sometimes the compositions take longer to resolve. Right. And, you know, that's just sort of a problem solving thing that I'm going through as an artist.
Well, as we all know, creative process is not predictable. We just
Right.
don't know until we're there, which is why I say, okay, well, you got to find something in the middle. Okay. This painting took 1 hour. This painting took 3. Which one sort of covers me in both circumstances? And so if that means pricing the 1 hour painting a little higher than you think you should, that's okay.
Right. Yeah, and I found also the other, this was what I was thinking that I had lost my train of thought, was that, so that works really well, like the formula that I'm using for certain sizes, but those middle in between sizes, I feel like some of that pricing method overprices that size, if that makes any sense.
Are you comfortable telling me the size of the painting and how much you charge?
Sure. So like a 30 by 30 or 36 by 36 square inch, one of my larger sizes, I would charge $1,200 for that. And like a small 12 by 12 painting, 12, yeah.
How much is the
like
small painting?
About 150.
150, okay.
And the middle ones, which would be like, say, a 24 by 24, I would let's see, 550 for those.
550, okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. I mean, I think that's totally reasonable.
Okay.
What kind of media?
It's acrylic.
Acrylic, okay.
Mostly acrylic, yeah.
Okay. I mean, I would even say the 12 by 12 could go to 200. I think that's not unreasonable.
Okay.
But let me be clear. So are you selling online or are you selling in a gallery or both?
Well, I haven't had success online yet, but I haven't developed those sources yet. Okay. Mostly it's in person. Yeah, different venues just locally.
Okay. At a gallery or like library?
Depends.
Well, so
I've done art fair, yeah,
okay.
Or I've done some galleries that are charging like 30%, 35% commission.
Well, 1,200 for the 36 by 36 in a gallery, like a commercial gallery.
Oh, well, that's, yeah, I'm not there.
That's a little bit on the low side. But the other thing too is if you decide to sell online, mostly people are not putting down that kind of money online. Usually
Okay.
it's like I think the most expensive thing I sold in my shop was 400. Like I've never even come close to selling something for 1,000. I have listed stuff and nobody bought it. I mean, maybe some people do. It didn't work for me. So yeah.
That's good to know.
Thanks, Joanna.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got Imola.
Yeah, and
Let's do
actually,
that.
Jamari had their hand up.
Oh, okay,
So
cool.
if we can let Jamari speak.
Hello?
Hi.
Okay, I didn't know if it connected or not. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for your time
Hello.
this afternoon. I had a question that just I didn't see had been touched on with the state of the economy and inflation and everything. I noticed myself that some of my sales have gone down,
Right.
and it's really hard for me to lower the prices of my artwork. I haven't done it, but I find that I have a lot of paintings that I just want to get rid of.
Mhm.
So I wondered if you had any strategies on what to do if you're not having as many art sales as normal or whatnot.
Is it a space problem? Because most of the time it is for me. It's like,
Yes.
oh, she's taking up so much space. I need to get rid of them. So something like that.
Yes.
Okay. I literally had a yard sale. I just had a yard sale.
I thought about that,
Whatever.
honestly.
Yeah. Well, because I moved cross country a couple of years ago, and I was like, I cannot take all this stuff. And a lot of it, I just was like, take it, fine.
Yeah, that's, I mean, my husband and I live internationally, and
Mhm.
since COVID and everything, we hadn't been traveling as much, but we're
Right.
considering starting to travel more. And I have tons of work since that, during the pandemic and everything, us creators were just creating.
Yep. Yes, we are.
I find I just have, too much work that's just sitting here, and I'm just trying to figure out the best way. I didn't know if it devalues it to do a big sale or something like that. Does that devalue the rest of your work? Like,
No.
because I've never done anything like that before.
You do what you have to do in that circumstance. I don't think people are gonna see your online shop. Let's say they did see your giveaway and be like, oh, they gave those away. I'm never gonna buy a painting from them ever again. You can tell people I'm moving, I have to get rid of this stuff. Like people will understand the context. And it's not to say you can't ever sell your work because I've given away so much work. Like you guys have no, for an artist, I think it does for us sometimes feel embarrassing that we had to like, oh, if I was a better artist, I would have sold it. No, we make so much work. It's just not sustainable.
Yeah. Thank you. That really helps. And then I also just had a quick question in regards to galleries, because the community I live in Las Vegas, and I noticed that the majority of the galleries here are selling wall space, right? And I haven't run into that as much in other communities. What I've read online doesn't make me a big fan of that, because typically that means that they're selling the wall space and not the actual work,
right?
Which I do notice. But that's also what the majority of what's available here. So it's a little bit difficult in that way,
Okay. There's a reason we have this stream, art scans and red flags for artists. What you're basically describing to me is a vanity gallery. Vanity galleries will charge an artist to show at that gallery or wall space, whatever you're talking. And there's actually vanity publications where they say, oh, we'll put your work in this publication, pay us $300. Nobody's looking at those. They aren't. Anybody that's legit, that really can truly advance your art career is not looking at that. In fact, they're trying not to look at that. Like the second people see, oh, it's a vanity gallery, they go, not gonna bother. So don't do that. That's absolutely a waste of your money.
That's what I felt like. And I read online that it was something to avoid,
Can I just jump in? Us at the Art Council, we actually have an artist opportunities page that review artist calls, and a lot of our county galleries are free and open to the public. They are for the community, for artists in our community to share work. So I really encourage you to check out that website. I'm going to put it in the chat now for you to just check out.
Oh yeah, I stay on that website. I'm definitely looking at more of the state and county offered programs, but just the galleries in general. I mean, for example, in the Art Factory, which is in the art district here in Las Vegas, the majority, if you go in and inquire about different gallery spaces, the majority of them are selling wall space.
Yeah, I mean, that will be the case in certain communities. That's just what there is. Some communities, they're just not going to have it. But the thing is, brick and mortar galleries are not everything. In fact, I feel like because there's so many opportunities online, most people are not showing in galleries. I think the vast majority of people are selling online. I mean, the world of capital A white cube gallery, it's a tiny percentage of the art world. And so I wouldn't tell yourself that you have to show in a brick and mortar. You don't have to. There's other ways to share your work.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Oh, one last thing. So you're talking about getting rid of your work. I know a lot of people will do what's called an Instagram flash sale. So they'll just say, this weekend, I'm giving away these paintings. Who wants them? And it always works because half the time it's like your family goes, oh, okay, I'll take it.
Yes. Yes. Well, those are things that I've definitely considered. I just was kind of a little bit hesitant just in regards to, like I said, does that devalue the work if you just need to get rid of some? Because like you said, we get an amount, we get a stack of them, If
that's the case, my work is worth nothing. So
yeah. I really appreciate that, because you do feel in some ways that you need to sell and sell and sell and sell. And if you're not selling, maybe you're not being as successful, but
then I'm not successful.
Yeah. I mean, I paint for fun. It's not always just, for profit. But I do notice in those regards, and just for a final question, in these type of difficult economic situations, sometimes we are tempted to alter our painting style to be more economically feasible. And how do you see that? And what is your, as this person with such an amazing background and so much experience in altering your style to fit the economic circumstances that are being presented?
Altering your style because you think it'll sell better,
Yeah,
or say changing media because you want to save money on supplies?
It could be both of those things. I think, in some regards, we're always trying to sell because it's a part of, what we do passionately. But maybe because of financial circumstances, you do have to change mediums as well.
I mean, that's fine if you want to change media, but I would not change what you do because you think it's going to sell better. Yeah. Because here's the problem. Let's just say you're like, oh, I hate painting bunnies, but I know that they sell. So I'm going to make all these bunny paintings. Okay. So let's say your bunny paintings start really selling. You are trapped making bunny paintings that you hate making all the time. So it's much better to make the work you actually enjoy, because again, you have to think sustainably. Like at some point, if I start selling more of these, am I just going to be pissed that I have to make bunny paintings? Or is it going to be something that I actually am like, oh yeah, I can pump out a bunch of these because they're kind of fun for me. So this idea of trying to sell things or changing what you paint or how you paint, I mean, media is a different thing. I'm just saying, if you love painting dragons, paint dragons. Because then people will buy that, because number one, they'll see the enthusiasm. If you told me to paint bunnies, I'd be like, see ya, I'm not going to do that. So it's like sustainability is important.
Yes, that really makes sense. Thank you for that perspective. I appreciate that.
Hey, thanks, Jamari. All right, we have one more person. Imola. Sorry, I don't know how to say your name. Imola.
All right, you are allowed to speak.
Hey, Superior, she said she preferred not to talk.
Sorry, I didn't read it. Sorry. Okay, so I'll just read it out loud. This is Imola's Instagram. Willing to look at the photos of the latest pieces, maybe give feedback on how much to change. Few people contacted me through DM. They inquired about the price. I got intimidated by the reaction. Maybe with your help, I could get better at this. Okay, well, I'll look at these pieces. Okay, I'm trying to judge by the clips how big that is. And it looks like it's a mixed media collage. Okay, here. Oh, they're really big. Okay, good. That's nice to actually show a human something because then you can see better. Well, first of all, they're works on paper. So automatically they're not going to be something that you can charge as much. Oh, these are, I guess, your kid drawings. Let's see, this is what okay, this is a painting. Okay. Quick note, because I'm a dork and I can't help myself, but you got to take better photos of your artwork because I can't see this with all of the lighting that's across it. And of course, we have a video about that on our YouTube. And I think Nevada has a photographing art video too, right?
We do. It's on our YouTube channel.
Great. Okay, so a piece like this, I mean, it's pretty big. So I feel like you probably could charge at least $400 or $500 just based on the size. But I don't know if you're selling it online yourself or if you're doing gallery or something like that. I'll just pretend you're selling it yourself. So I don't think that's unreasonable. For a piece that's this big, it looks like it's a labored piece. It doesn't look like you just splashed paint, although Jackson Pollock did that. And, you know, we value that's millions of dollars. For painting like this, well, I can't tell if it's on canvas. It looks like it's on canvas or what media it is. This one, I'm having trouble placing the scale. You can see the scale really matters for a lot of people. Let me go through if I can see some other ones. Okay, so this is the old sketch. All right, another piece. Barely feel my fingers. Oh, okay, so you got, is this a reel or is that just a photo? Let me just see. So a piece like this, I'm judging by the size of the scissors. This piece would not be 500. I think you could probably ask for 200 or 300 for a piece like this. Oh, okay. They're saying it's on canvas. Let me go back to this one. If you can tell me if it's acrylic or oil or if there's like other media involved, that would also be good. And, you know, that is a nice thing to add on Instagram, by the way. It is helpful, like if people want to know if it's for sale, like I wouldn't put it in the beginning. Like I would say right here, you say, this is what happens when I have a whole house to myself. And then at the bottom, you can write 18 by 24 because that actually bothers me a lot. Like a lot of artists do this on Instagram. The caption is 18 by 24, acrylic on canvas, 2019. And I'm like, I'm not interested. I like what you wrote a lot better, which is, you know, listening to ABBA. That's something I can connect with. A piece like this, at least 300, I think is not unreasonable. 300 to 400 is probably good. But you can see my biggest reaction to this one was scale. It's just so big. It does depend on the paper. I don't know what quality paper you have. If it's like really, really nice archival paper, if it's like butcher paper, that does change. So I think if it was on really cheap paper, you probably can't charge 500. Definitely you can if it's really, really nice paper. And, you know, I know art supplies are expensive. They're not an easy expense, especially if you have a art store addiction problem like me. I just go in and I just touch all the paper. It's terrible. But it does pay off to make work that is archival with good quality supplies, because it's just a good habit. Because you might say to yourself right now, oh, well, I don't have a big following. Nobody wants to buy the work. Maybe sometimes they will. I mean, I've had people buy my old stuff that I was like, oh, this never sold, but it's like 6 years later it did. So you never know, but hopefully oh, they're saying last one is 40 by 60, Rembrandt soft pastels, arches. Okay, so you do have good quality supplies. So yeah, you can probably go on the higher end. Cool, thanks, Amola.
Hey, I think that's all the questions
Cool.
we have. Well, thank you so much. Are there any, oh, we're out of time as well. So thank you everyone who have attended. If you've missed anything, we have recorded this webinar and we will be uploading it on our YouTube page. And again, please do follow Clara and all of her social media. Art Prof on Instagram and YouTube, and Clara Lieu on Instagram, right?
Yep.
Cool, cool. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, everybody. Good luck with all your pricing. And remember, it's okay to mess up. You will.
Thank you. All right, going to. Okay, I think we're done. Are you muted? How come I can't?
Nope, I'm here.
Okay. I still see Jonelle, but
It says 0 attendees up there, but he still has his name.
removed. Yeah, I don't know. Do you see it?
Hmm.
Okay, well, I'm gonna end it and then I'll talk to you on
Okay,
Teams.
on Teams, yeah, okay.
Yeah, all right.